Okay, everyone, so we're going to get started. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon or morning if you're on the West Coast. So today's panel is called For Generations to Come, Anpetu Dialogues from Standing Rock. So my name is Sophie Hirsh. I'm the senior editor at Green Matters. We're a sustainability news website. We cover things like environmental news, climate justice, low waste living, and things along those lines. Our two panelists today, I'm really excited to get to talk to them and hear more about the Anpetu wind farm project. One is Chris Deschini. He's a member of the Navajo Nation. He's also an attorney and an engineer. He recently completed a term as the director of the Office of Indian Energy with the U.S. Department of Energy during the Obama administration, I believe. Pretty cool. He's also a former member of the Arizona House of Representatives, and he's served in the U.S. Marine Corps. He's also the owner and founder of Deschini LLC, a national tribal energy and legal firm. And he's also the co-founder of the National Intertribal Energy Council. So virtually give it up for Chris. And yeah, the only person I can see is Chris and Joseph. So I can't see you guys cheering along. But you guys are all in your sweatpants while we're all have nice shirts on top. So you guys are good. Our other panelist is Joseph Mcneil Jr. He's an enrolled member of the Standing Rock Sioux tribe. He's also an activist for Indigenous rights as well as community economic development. His involvement today is that he's the general manager of Sage Development Authority. They're the public power authority that's developing the wind farm that we're here to talk about today. He's also the president of the Standing Rock Development Corporation, and he is a former member of the Tribal Council for the Standing Rock Sioux Tribe and a former member of the Wind Energy Tribes United. So we'll give it up for Joseph too. So what we're going to be doing today is just a kind of panel with Chris and Joseph talking about the wind farm, but I'm going to give anybody who might be new to the project a little bit of background quickly, and we're going to watch a video. It's going to be great. So the Anpetu wind farm is going to be a 235 megawatt wind farm. It's being built on the Standing Rock Reservation. And for anybody wondering, Anpetu translates to morning light or the breaking of the new day in the Lakota language. I think that's really interesting. Really cool name choice for a wind farm. So the Sage Development Authority, that's a public power authority that was actually created by the Standing Rock Sioux tribe, and they're managing the development of the wind farm. It's going to be the first tribally owned public power wind farm. It is the first tribally owned public power wind farm to ever get this far in the development process in the United States. And once it's built, it's going to be the single largest revenue source for the Standing Rock Sioux tribe. It's estimated that it will double the tribe's annual revenue. And unlike the fossil fuel industry, who's taking in, all their new revenue for some big guys upstairs, Sage is going to be devoting these funds to economic development, reinvesting them in future Sage projects, and investing them in the Standing Rock community as a whole. So it's really a project for the community and for future generations, and not just to make money. So to give you an even better little inside look, we're going to play a quick video right now about the wind farm. It's coming, just one sec.
Sage development is to me an opportunity for our people to take part in developing the energies that are around us. As the Lakota and Dakota people, our environment is a big part of who we are and who we were as a people.
We feel that to be Sage, that we are responsible for the cleansing as we develop energy, that we're cautious and that we use the ingredients and the elements of that cleansing as we go forward. And so we thought it was appropriate to name our organization Sage.
The Standing Rock Sioux tribe had always been exploring renewable energy, but really never had a department within the tribe that was solely focused on renewable, whether it would be wind, solar.
The Sage Development Authority started off as the Standing Rock Renewable Energy Power Authority, a Section 17 started by the Standing Rock Sioux tribal government to facilitate commercial scale, I should say commercial scale development for the people of Standing Rock Nation.
The organization's purpose is basically just to do the business side of the wind farm. We're looking into raising money and to get upfront studies done, which will help gain more equity into the project. So more equity means more ownership, and it's going to be the vehicle with which Standing Rock Sioux Tribe is able to own this wind farm.
Yeah, for a second I thought Joseph was wearing the same shirt today that he was wearing in the video, but I think it's a little different.
A little different.
Okay.
There's one button on that shirt in the last video that didn't make it.
You know what? It's quarantine times. Missing a button, that's really not the worst thing that's happened. We'll allow it. We'll allow that. Okay, cool. So before we get into the Q&A, I'm just gonna go over a couple more quick things about the wind farm. So one thing that is really important for Sage, that Sage wants people to know, is that this project is not just to benefit the Standing Rock Sioux Tribe. It's also, they're hoping that it will be a replicable model for other Native communities. So as you may have noticed, the title of this event says 4 generations to come. That's kind of related to the 7th generation philosophy. And please, Joseph or Christopher, if anything I say, you want to add anything to it or it's wrong, let me know. So it's kind of related to that 7th generation philosophy that you want to build things now that'll be sustained for in the future for 7 generations from now. Sage has a goal specifically of existing for 500 or more years so that there is a sustainable world living for people in the future for generations and generations to come. So not only is this project going to benefit, you know, the Standing Rock Sioux Tribe right now and future generations, it's also a replicable model that these other Native communities can replicate and implement and have for their communities and communities in the future. And again, this is the complete opposite of the fossil fuel industry that, you know, digging for coal and fracking and oil pipelines, all of these things, they're destroying the environment, and it's issues of environmental justice. And I could talk about that all day, you know, the list goes on, but the goal of those companies is just making money for the people in charge, while a project like this, it's not only something good for the environment, but it's also good for communities and communities that the United States has oppressed for so many years. So that's a reason I think the project's really exciting. So now before we get into the questions, there's just one quick announcement that we want to share. So a group called the NDN Collective, those are like the letters, NDN, they've announced a generous $100,000 challenge grant that will support the Standing Rock Sioux Tribe in ensuring ownership of the Anpetu wind project. So NDN is so NDN, it's a grant-making organization. They invest in visions and leadership and development of Indigenous change makers. So with this $100,000 grant, what they're doing is matching every dollar donated to Anpetu 2 for 1. And with these funds, what Sage is going to do is start building a key maintenance road that leads up to the future location of the wind farm. So if the things you hear about today, you find them interesting, they take a moment to support this effort by making a donation so that we can guarantee we'll get that $100,000 grant, since it is based on a 2-to-1 match system. And that gift will make this renewable energy source possible on Standing Rock Sioux Tribe's native lands. You can just do that by going to onpetuwe.com, and all the information you need is right there. So we're going to get into the questions now. And while we're talking about this grant, first I'm going to ask Joe if he could tell everybody a little bit more about what the grant will actually be going towards. And also, just since we're starting off this section, if you want to talk a little about the project in general as well.
Okay, well, thank you very much. You've done a fantastic job at describing the project and where we've come from and where we're going.
Thanks.
I don't need to say anything. Just kidding. The NDN Collective Grant, we want to thank Nick Tilson and the folks down at NDN, because they're really grassroots type people looking at people who are making a difference in their communities and their native nations, and whether that be in a city, you know, that's looking to get traction and fighting for Indigenous rights, or on a tribal scale. They look at all the spectrum, you know, of people who are making change. So we want to thank them for this, because they recognize what we're doing here isn't for profit, like you said. This is a public power authority and it's a nonprofit. So everything that we generate here is going to be revenue, is going to go into building microgrid or distributed energy systems for the communities, and then also reinvesting into other projects so that we can do more work in economic development. We have a CDFI, we're building a credit union, the tribe for infrastructure, for roads, for schools, energy projects for schools to do community offset. But ultimately, one of our aspirations is to be that public power authority that owns and regulates the utility system here at Standing Rock, North and South Dakota, for members and non-members, to be that public power authority. So we want to thank NDN for what they've done for us, because there's a couple key components that you need to have in order to have a wind project work. Land control. And that is what makes this project unique, is that the land that we're utilizing is entirely owned by the Standing Rock Sioux tribe. The wind capacity on that land is rated at roughly 50 to 55% by AWS True Power, which is a standard bearer in the wind industry for measuring wind. Also is something like this production tax credit. Building this road to maintain a production tax credit gives it a very high profile for investors, so that the price of the energy remains extremely competitive. So we want to thank NDN for the $100,000 that they're matching us with, and to be able to start this road project. We're working with tribal assets to do this. So we're hiring our own people to build the road. Of course, engineers are going to be outside taking a look and making sure everything is up to par. And we're very excited for this. So go team.
Yeah, awesome. So Chris, I'll turn to you for the next question. You've been involved in energy projects regarding native lands for a large part of your career. So with all of the knowledge that you have, what are some of the challenges that you think either this specific project will face, or also in general that Native communities face when building projects like this? Oh, you're on mute.
Thank you. And thanks, Sophie, and good to be here with you, Joseph. And I want to thank SAGE in general, and also the nation, for giving me an opportunity to share a few words. For Indian country out there, welcome, and appreciate the opportunity to just talk as well. So to the question, there are really three basic challenges I'd like to highlight. First one, we identified at Department of Energy, and that is the issue regarding raising capital. In Indian country, that is a big challenge in terms of finding resources to support all the phases of development, starting with the pre-development and then leading the development, getting to financial close through construction to COD, and then forward thereon. Capital also affects the type of equity and ownership that a tribe may have in a particular project. And so finding that and buying into a project, because these projects are sometimes on the orders of hundreds of millions of dollars. And so when you deal with that kind of investment, finding the capital to begin the whole project is usually a serious consideration. The second one is really looking at the challenge of permitting in multiple jurisdictions. So we have at the tribal level, either local and or a central government and their laws, because as you know, and most folks in America should know, that tribes are separate sovereigns. They are sovereigns in their own right. And so they have their own laws, their own codes and regulations. The next level that folks deal with is generally the federal government. And of course, there are many issues tied to that. And then there's always a state component as well. So imagine the complex web that tribal developers have to face when dealing with permitting, with regulatory approvals, and with the development process, as you have to coordinate amongst and through these various barriers to permitting and citing a particular project. The last one, the third one, is really a function of the environmental challenges. And that is related to the second point of permitting, and it's really dealing with NEPA. If we were to develop a project off reservation, private lands, or off any kind of tribal allotment, or a different land tenure system, the process is normally much faster because the environmental requirements are less, if any at all. And so with tribal projects, if there is any federal nexus, if there's a significant decision or any kind of overlay, then a NEPA review is triggered, and usually that not only adds time, but the duration of that extent requirement at cost, sometimes to the detriment of a project. So if you put all three together, developing in the Indian country becomes very, very difficult. But as I've shared with Joe and members of his team, this model that the tribe has done with this particular project could be a model that could be replicated, because what they're showing is you're finding a path for it despite the challenges and the barriers that Indian country faces on project development.
Mm-hmm. If I could follow up with what Chris is saying, there's some of the things that he mentioned there, as the barriers, and like the PSC, Rosebud has done their own public service commission and enacted their own utilities code. And that's something here at Standing Rock, that we have a utilities commission and are working towards the regulatory arm. And that's something that SAGE will be sponsoring that activity to. But he's right. The federal overlay, I think, is something that could have quite an impact on the activities that are done at tribes, on Native nations and trust land. But it's forming these Section 17 organizations, that give legs to the dream, and the ability to fundraise for the activities that the power authority is going to do without affecting the finances of the tribe. And I think that that's very crucial when we look at establishing these organizations, that the tribe can participate as much as it wants without being liable, to a great degree for the project should it not be successful in opening and operating. So this pre-development activity that we're taking on now is really proofing the project. Right now, we are our tribal historic preservation officers, our THPO officers are out there micrositing the hillside where we have 60 turbines projected to go, and so every tribal asset is being utilized as we do this. And then again, our tribal roads will be working to develop the maintenance roads for these projects. So every asset that we can participate for and working in concert with the tribe, becomes that equity position into the project. And that's where we hope that this model that we're doing can be replicated by, any another tribe that would like to do it this way or do it their own way. And I think that's what we recognize in respect to all of our relatives out there, is that we're all caretakers of the land. We want to make sure that we ensure that balance for our children's children, and also for all of our other relatives, be the two-legged, the winged, the four-legged, etc. That there's this balance, and we feel fortunate for that. So those are the things that make us unique. Like I said, we're not for profit, profiteering, but we are for ensuring that there is balance and generosity in this type of project that just doesn't only have an impact of bringing in money, but what are we going to do and how are we going to help our own people in this? So I feel fortunate enough to be in a time and place where this is occurring on my watch, and this is a good thing to have happen. And somebody said that God doesn't put anything in front of you that you can't handle. I wonder a little bit, but I know we're going to keep pushing it in front of it. So it's good work.
Awesome. So we just talked a little about some of the challenges that could be faced. What are some of the accomplishments that you guys have achieved so far in all the work you've done on this? What are some of the things that stand out that you're proud of so far?
We have a queue in the Southwestern Power Pool application. Our interconnect application is in, so we're actually in line, for interconnection for commercial sale of our wind farm. And we want to thank Sierra Club for helping us out with that. Wallace Global Fund for previous assistance in helping standing up SAGE, our organization. We've formed our Section 17. We're chartered. We follow the American Public Power Authority model, and we intend to do that so that we assure that once our power authority is up and running, that we follow all of those standards that are bankable and investable, and adhere to regulatory practices, best practices in the industry. Our board and our strategic planning is complete, and you can see that on the Anpetu website. And our crowdfunding effort is up and underway, and we feel really good about that because that is one of the things where everyone that's on this call now and in the future, $5 goes a long way to helping what it is for tribes to own their own projects, for people to own their own project. And I think us giving the opportunity to show that communities can do this on their own, with help from some foundations or some grants to get it rolling, to make a difference in their own lives. So, yeah, those are some of the major accomplishments that we've achieved so far.
Awesome. So Chris, I'd love to hear a little from you, since you have so much experience working in the energy world. In what ways is this project unique? Just besides kind of like the elevator pitch of it all, how is it different from other wind farm projects that you're familiar with?
There are a number of attributes that I would highlight with regards to this project, but the main one is the tribe is developing it. The tribe is in the lead position. The tribe is looking to utilize its natural resource, and they are the drivers of the project. And so the leadership from the tribal council, from the former elected leaders to the senior leadership on the development authority with Joe and his team are all tribal. And that's key. It's different than many of models outside of Indian country. A second consideration is the tribe is looking to own it, and often you find challenges with regards to ownership. Companies come in, they are an investor, they look for a rate of return. There's sometimes an equity investor is looking for the long haul, and then to the tribe, what's left is maybe a lease payment or a royalty payment. Right. In this case, my belief is that the team here is looking not only for that partner, but looking to find partners, and therefore driving again what the structuring of this project will look like. For the other things that are tied to this are things like community benefit models that will help the tribe, as opposed to strictly a model that is being developed for revenues and a return, or a flip. The tribe is looking at the long term and as it relates to economics. One of the things that we hear so often or see and read out in Indian country is this whole concept of jobs, income, or sometimes they call it nation building. But to me, before you even get to those concepts academically, you need to have the infrastructure. And the tribe is driving an infrastructure project to get to the points where we now have revenues that can go back and fuel work programs, workforce development, and then all these other programs that are tied to the government's function in providing resources for its communities. And so, and then I think the last part, well, there, like I said, there are many, but one of the last things I want to highlight at the moment is this is a model that once it picks up as they're doing now, is going to be a beacon for the rest of Indian country. Indian country is going to see a tribe taking the reins, taking the leadership, and then working to show how it's done despite all those barriers that I'd mentioned before. And it's going to be very attractive in terms of leadership. Joe, I would say get ready to go on a speaking circuit, because that's what's going to happen.
Yeah.
I forgot how we did that. Yeah.
So Joe, I'd love to hear a little more about what would the success of this project mean for the Standing Rock Sioux tribe, and also what would it mean for you personally as a member?
I think for us at home, it means, one, that we would use our revenue to reinvest into secondary and tertiary projects. One of the larger problems that we have in Indian country is that we've been left out of the world, basically. You know, if so interconnection into the queue to create more markets for like Cheyenne River is just south of but then there's also Oceti-Sakowee Power Authority, and they're a group of Oceti-Sakowee Lakota Dakota tribes in North and South Dakota that have started their own public power authority years ago. So we are a public power authority owned by a single Native nation. That's what makes us unique. And that kind of transmission, making ourselves as a presence and saying tribes are doing it for real, and we need to build transmission lines out to get to market, because we need power. Everybody needs more power, but the power that we are bringing is coming through our lens as Native people, and that we're not extractive in that sense. We're going to be looking out for what's the best for the next season, you know, and planting for the next season and growing and thinking of the next season. So speaking of those next seasons here at Standing Rock, our investment into education, into innovation, I would like, and that's the board's decision as well, is to become a center of innovation here in northern North America for solar, wind, new turbine development, vortex development. Phyllis Young is always great about talking about new innovations in energy development. And she's her and Fawn have been great beacons as a vice chair and chairwoman of our board of directors. So, but the revenue here, it would be reinvested back into energy projects that would affect school campuses and spark our children's minds in science, technology, education, and mathematics, so that we can become more of a, innovative force. And those infrastructure builds like housing, major needs here, jobs, economic development, financial education, financial literacy, business development and education, not just through CFIs, providing small business loans and business loans, but also credit unions, that are people owned, that are member owned. Also developing district community centers for processing, whether that be gardening, whether it be game. How do people utilize the talents that they have at home and have those be like USDA certified in locations that a person can start their own business from? So reaching out and using our people's own best interest and talents to develop that, so that people can be their own business people, however they want to do. If they want to raise it up to a level where they're becoming large, get a loan, get another loan, and start that business, or whether they want to remain small and, do what makes them happy. So we really want to try and do this organically through the communities. And there are other organizations here at Standing Rock that are looking to do the same thing. And we all work together just to try and make, a better living by our people's voice, not by what we think is best as a leader, but leaders are only amplifiers of the people's voice. So, and that I think is important.
Awesome. I do have a couple more questions. I just want to put it out there to our audience. We are going to open it up to an audience Q&A in just a couple minutes. So if you have any questions, start brainstorming, and then I'll let you guys know soon how you can submit the questions. So next question's for Chris. So we talked a little about how Sage Development Authority is hoping this can be a replicable model for other Native communities. Do you see this as something that could happen, and kind of what would the timeline be on that, and how might it affect the energy economy of Native communities?
So yes, this can be replicated in Indian country. Each situation and each tribal project is unique because all tribes are unique in their own right. So there will be different challenges when it comes to, let's just call them micro challenges. Say, for example, a tribe might be a constitutionally derived tribe that has a constitution. You might have a tribe that's a treaty tribe. You might have a pueblo or a native village. They're all different. And so there's some initial work done in the beginning just to kind of get through all those issues. But the model, once it's settled, is pretty straightforward. We would look at the team that comes together. This is where I think a team like Sage and Standing Rock could come and help advise, because really networks talk with the tribe. And so to me, once this gets on its path, on its way, this is almost immediate. We can do this in Indian country because there are a couple places that would be ready for it. Like all energy projects, there would need to be a feasibility done in the beginning, or pre-feasibility, just to make sure it's a viable project in that particular location a tribe might be looking for. And then you just proceed down the line. The next, I think, challenges in the replication is solving one of the equations on the capital. So just like there's a whole industry of capital out there, that would need to be married up to the right tribal entity. And some tribes might be self-sustaining. They might have other revenues from other industries internally that they could do the project themselves. That changes the dynamic on how the capital is raised. Others may not. So we would look at that. And those would be things we would count for. But the overall implementation of the project would be immediate. We could do this within months, even today, if we needed to.
Awesome. So my last question that I have is for both of you. I'd love to hear what you both think about this. So of course, there's, as we've mentioned, the crowdfunding campaign. What are some things that the general public and anybody who wants to support this effort do to support it? Should they be writing to lawmakers? Should they be what? You fill in the rest of that sentence for me. What should people be doing?
I would agree to say, writing to lawmakers and looking at, I think Department of Energy is at right now, has a few grants out there that we can take advantage of. But finding those partners out there that can help facilitate, this type of development is crucial, particularly when you're looking to do it, initially, but maybe when you're looking to do it your own way. Crowdfunding, big. So definitely tell a friend, give $5. We're looking to make a change that's not political, and right now in this political world where everything's, left, right, black, white, red, blue, we're looking at green, and green is what we all need to live. So getting back to the basics of what we are as human beings and how we look to take care of the earth so we can take care of our kids, I think is really taking a step back and taking a long look and saying, how can I help not just tribes, but communities like this? And we could say the same thing in other countries that are third world countries. And how can this model help in a third world, situation? Get away from those things that are extractive, but developing on a community-based level. So I guess it's looking in and seeing what else can be that you can do personally. There's always a way, I think, with governmental systems to make things easier, particularly for Native nations as we've been pushed down and pushed back and overregulated over the centuries in an effort to take the land that America enjoys. So now this is us being able to utilize or making an opportunity to utilize the little land that we have left, holding on to it, and finding those instruments and techniques that will allow us to even acquire more of what we have as our nations, because we actually have to buy our land back within our own borders, if you can believe that. And that's one of the great dichotomies and, hypocrisies of what's, happened to us over the centuries here. So it's social justice, it's environmental justice, and let's get down. Let's donate.
I would say, Sophie, for the general listeners, there's four things. First is to educate. As my mother would say, and she's an elder in our community, they have a term, means educate them all. So we would be doing that, and that's what we're doing partly here. Second is we need the investment, and Joe had mentioned the crowdfunding. Because of the challenges, we need to find new solutions. One of my great, you're gonna learn from me that I like to cite and quote great I like to cite is good old Einstein. He said, significant problems we face cannot be solved by the same level of thinking that created them. So crowdfunding that we're doing here is a new way of tackling the capital problem. So I like what we're doing, and to throw and support that statement. Folks should look at in supporting these communities. The third way is really working with our business industry partners, and SAGE is on a good path to do that. But nationally, in the beginning, you mentioned our work. We are working on a national scale to create an intertribal energy trade association. That is the, if you will, vanguard that will hopefully work on the fourth area, which is dealing with government and the political side, and working to affect policies and changes so we can reduce the regulatory, permitting, funding, all the law that may get in the way of energy development for tribes. And so you put them all together, but you need a central coordinating effort, and that's hopefully a group like the National Intertribal Energy Council, and folks like Sage and Joe and others like that. Hopefully we will come together to start affecting positive changes, not only for our respective local projects, but for Indian country as a whole.
Awesome. So we're going to open it up to a Q&A from the audience now. So all you guys need to do is type your message into the chat window. Make sure you're sending it either to everyone, or send it just to me if you want it to be secret. I will read it out loud though, so feel free to drop your questions. We'll give it a minute, see if we get some coming in. Oh, here we go. We have Dr. MKD. Would like to know what % of the approximate $275 million capital stack, if any, will be crowdfunded?
As much as humanly possible. We had initial $1.5 million as our goal, and then we have, some folks that is it, why are you limiting yourself? So, as much as we can. The goal of SAGE is to maintain a level of ownership throughout the process. So we go from pre-development into development to maintain a position with the developer. And as we move forward, that gets sold off, is to still maintain that position. So we're looking to do something unique here. A percent, it's an unknown as we go through this process. 10% would be fantastic of the total project. 30 to 40%. We're not going to say no to anything like that. So we're really looking to generate as much, as we possibly can, so that we can not just make one project, but knock out 3 and make a big difference in our community, so that we can do these microgrid projects for our homes. And so that would also include, weatherizing the home, making more energy efficient homes as we develop economically in the near future, to have that plan go out. So we look at this as a continuous process outside of what this initial project is going to be. I think we're looking at really $325 million for the total project. So it's substantial.
We'll just wait a minute, see if some more questions roll in. Feel free to ask anything. It can be about the project, or it can be more of a general question about Sage Development Authority as well.
I've never been much of the high finance type of person, and Dave calls me the bird dogger. You know, there's a problem, boom, Joe goes after it. This one, tackle that, get this, get that done. So, and I enjoy that kind of work. So.
While we're waiting for hopefully some more questions. Oh, here we go. Somebody wants to know if we can ask Joe about the board.
Great. It's a women-led board, and Fawn Washizi is our board chairwoman. We've had board training 2 years ago to bring the board to, or candidates for the board together and talk about what is a board and what are its purposes and functions, in particular with a public power authority. And that's where we brought in with American Public Power, the APPA, and we had formed our Section 17, and our board was established. Selected during these meetings. We asked Fawn, you know, and I was a part of those meetings initially, and I wasn't asked to sit on the board. But we asked, you know, Fawn, as she was really developing this program for like the last 8 years when she was working with the tribe in energy development through land operations through a grant by Department of Energy, to do this. So we wanted to make sure that, you know, she was in charge, because she knows this thing inside and out. And we asked Phyllis Young to also sit on the board. And these two are powerhouses. If you know Phyllis Young, you know she's a powerhouse. She's a force of nature, and she's always working for equity. And the whole DAPL fight, she was a force to be reckoned with on the highway, standing there toe-to-toe with the police, with anyone else who came to try and infringe upon our rights. So as Phyllis and Fawn, as our chairwoman and vice chairwoman, we feel very good about that. We also have ex-chairman Dave Rochambeau II. He's, I think he's our secretary, and he brings a wealth of knowledge, as he was the Morgan Sioux. He was a member of the local rural electric co-op, Morgan Sioux here, and being the chairman of that, he had quite a lot of experience. He still has quite great insight into how the business model with Basin, which is our rural transmission operator, and our rural provider, electric provider, operate. So that's great insight there. Then also we have Warren Hawk, who's writing grants for the tribes, for multiple tribes, and in his own businesses as a consultant. So he brings in that experience as well. We also have Ben Harrison, and Ben Harrison is a tribal council member and rancher. So he's always looking out for the environment and what's going to be safe for our local environment in the area that the project's going to be. So this project is really in his district. And then also we have Tim Mintz, and Tim Mintz is more notably noted as starting the THPOs throughout Indian country. So he was a big part of NAGPRA, and we're very fortunate to have him. His depth of cultural knowledge and of our societies, our spiritual aspects are unparalleled. His grandmother taught him a lot, and we're fortunate to have him on, and that COVID didn't take him, you know, as COVID has affected all of us in a pretty devastating way, with our elders and our languages being affected when people pass away. So yeah, we're really fortunate in our board, and look forward to getting some younger blood on as we get more established, so that there's a voice there, and continue the process.
Okay, that's a great segue into one of the questions that was asked. Lauren wants to know if any youth specifically are engaged with the project directly in any way.
We ask, you know, from our own families right now, and we're going to be looking to have more youth engagement. We want to make sure initially that we are having a project that is feasible. So right now we're proving the feasibility, doing the cultural studies. There's going to be alterations to the site locations, maintaining the production tax credit so that we have a project, because without the production tax credit for the road project, which is critical, so we're asking everybody to help us out a little bit, you know, match us dollar for dollar on that we actually have a project. And so I'm going out into the districts. I went to Long Soldier last night, but they didn't have a quorum, but I've also met with the Sioux County Commission, and I'll be meeting with all the districts on this project and what it means to us and what we're looking to develop. So having that youth component and reaching out to our children, you know, having this effect for education. What does renewable energy mean to them, so that we can start implementing that into our strategic plan, I think is going to be vital. But number one is to sign up, then our kids know it's for real.
S. Schaefer wants to know, can you explain more about how the project will interconnect with the existing power infrastructure?
Right now, this is going to be, we're studying the interconnection process with Southwestern Power Pool. And they have the closest KV line. I think it's 235 KV that travels through the reservation. So we're going to tie into that line to go into outside markets. So the revenue that we generate from selling our power onto that market will help us to start building microgrid systems for our communities. Now that's going to take a negotiation with Basin. It's going to take a negotiation with More Grand Sioux and our establishment as a tribal power authority, so that we can control, manage people having power, you know, provided for and by the tribe. Hopefully the goal is to have it in a reduced way, so it's not full price. I think we're paying anywhere between 12 to 14 cents a kilowatt hour right now, and closer to like Bismarck, they're paying 7 to 8 cents. So making that more fair, or even under, is the goal, so that we have cheap, reliable, resilient power for our people in the future. So those will be systems that will be built by us, supported and maintained by us. And as time goes over, you know, within 10 years, we should be acquiring more of the actual utility lines that exist here on the reservation and manage them as a power authority.
Sophie, if I may, also in general, because I worked on a project at Navajo on transmission, and we're looking separately on projects in Indian country with interconnection. So there is a process with that, and I know the team that Joe has probably looked at this, but in general, what we do is just like anything, you have to do a feasibility study, and then you look at the plan itself. Some places or some entities like the power pool that Joe is talking about may require an impact study of the new transmission that is being put onto the existing infrastructure. And so they'll figure that out, and then they'll deal with the tribal with the utility. So Basin, whomever out there will all have a part in discussions on that. Then they'll probably pick a site depending if it's an existing substation, or they'll create a new one. And then from there, that will be your interconnection point into the existing, provided all the studies show favorably. And then of course you still have the cost consideration of the building the transmission. And then one of the other things that we see also is who takes ownership of that substation. So the substation can be separate and apart from the actual generation of the generation facility. So all of these all come into play in dealing with the interconnection of an existing power infrastructure.
Cool. We have two last audience questions that were put in. One's from Paul. has an RFP process been considered for the financing? I've Googled that. If anybody's wondering, it means request for proposal. I'm not embarrassed that I had to Google it.
I think it's a consideration as we go down the process. We're interviewing developers currently, and some of those developers carry on power purchasers along with them. So there's a lot of relationships out there that are already, you know, established. And as we go, you know, down this path in the next 2.5 years, one thing I didn't mention about our new connection application is that it's going to take roughly 2.5 to 3 years for us to get through that process, and that, you know, determining exactly what Chris said, what that's going to look like. We're going to need money for our transformer as well at that substation to get onto the line. So there's going to be a lot of interplay and variables, you know, happening during this 2.5 to 3 year process. So I'm not going to commit to, you know, one possibility of financing. As of our press release, I think we had people that are, you know, saying, we can do this for you right now, just give it to us. And we said, okay, let us maintain our position here before you swallow us up whole. You know, that's our ultimate goal. So as we look to continue to interview and discuss and build, these things I do believe will play out in the natural course of events. But I would defer to Chris on that, as well as he's probably had much more experience in this process for projects in Indian country and in the country moreover.
Joe, I think you did great.
Okay. We have one. Oh, sorry. Anything else on that one?
I said I'm on tour already.
Yeah. There's one more audience question from Chelsea Stone. Want to note that I did work with a Chelsea Stone, who's also a journalist, a few years ago. Chelsea, if it's the same you, hey girl, let me know. Either way, somebody named Chelsea Stone wants to know, are you considering a storage component on the project?
I think for our 235 megawatt project, it hasn't really been considered. It's just getting it onto the lines and getting it out. For other projects, I think is definitely something that we need to consider as we start having more discussions with like Basin. You know, they have a renewable portfolio. They wanted to meet about 500 megawatts. So how are they meeting that, and do they want to increase that so that there's resiliency on the systems? I think that anytime we're going to be looking at solar power, we have to talk about battery storage. We have to talk about storage. So a discussion that I had with another group last year in talking about taking communities off the grid. You know, its ultimate goal of mine is to take them off the grid altogether, whether it be batteries and diesel, you know, to back up those storage systems. The financial feasibility is really what comes into question. You know, can communities afford that, and is it an investable project for communities? So I think when we were talking about what you asked previously about are there ways that people can help, you know, start pushing and asking those questions. We don't have to live specifically by buying from the systems that we're buying our electricity from now. You know, so how are we going to really change these systems? And it's having that voice and desire and push, you know, your Senate, your congressional House members to start pushing for these different systems that are going to get better as more money's invested into them. And as there's more of a desire to have them, then I think storage component will be more prevalent in community systems, because that's what we're going to want to do for our small communities. My first community that we'd like to do this in is roughly 50 houses. You know, the next one's about 80 houses. And here in Long Soldier, I think we're roughly 250 to 300 houses. So, I mean, this is us doing it in a small way. And on larger systems, I think there's much more of an opportunity that's investable for people to take a look at.
Awesome.
I would echo.
Go ahead.
So the projects are being developed in Indian country where you may have at one location a wind farm, but at another location, maybe there's challenges with siting a large acreage for the wind farm. So what you do then is maybe to support what Joe was talking about, the reliability, the resiliency, and also to support baseline power needs, is you have, if you will, a battery farm, and you have megawatts of batteries. And so they work in as an overall system where you have generation from the wind, but then it's supporting a battery facility maybe down the road a little bit. And so eventually the planning would consider storage in that regard. But if you look at the actual project, sometimes you don't include the storage component, but it could be part of a larger build out infrastructure wise.
Cool. I do have one more question I'm going to ask Chris. Is there any other audience questions? No? Don't see anything? Okay, cool. Before I ask that question, I just want to remind everybody that the NDN Collective is matching every dollar that's donated to onpetuwe.com. They're matching it 2-for-1 up to $100,000. The funds from this grant will help Sage begin building this key maintenance road that will lead up to the future location of the wind farm. So if you found the information that you learned today interesting, whether that's from an environmental perspective or social perspective, whatever calls out to you, this is a really great effort that you can support. Again, it's on onpetuwe.com, and that collective will be matching every donation raised, every dollar 2-for-1 up to $100,000. So yeah, so that being said, Chris, I'd love to hear your sort of final thoughts, your thoughts about Sage, and do you think that this is sort of like cracking the code of a way of like a significant new way going into the future that Native tribes can, help with like their self-determination and not having to depend on outside energy sources? Do you think this is going to be the future?
Yes, we need projects like this where it's led by the tribal vision, that the tribal leadership are invested, and that the community supports as a whole. And then you bring in a tribal vehicle, meaning the structuring component of the entity, and then you bring in tribal professionals to run the energy entity. And then the ultimate goal is to get a project done, which then will yield return benefits back to the community. So absolutely. And then the next thing is then to take that model, replicate it, but also share it and disseminate. Remember my statement, educate them all. And that includes our friends outside of Indian country and our friends who don't know yet, but are maybe on Wall Street or in Silicon Valley, or maybe even Indian gaming with resources, that they have resources to say, you know what, we've got a project for you, and it makes a lot of sense and it does a lot of good. They need to come to Joe, they need to come to us, they need to come to Indian country, and they need to sit down and have a frank conversation on how it's possible. As one of my colleagues says, there's plenty to go around. It's about time the Indian country gets theirs.
Awesome. Is there anything you want to add, Joseph?
I support everything that Chris is saying. Groups like his, the Intertribal Energy Trade Organization, those are going to be really critical for us, so that we have a place to go, so that there's a central core, of information dissemination, and then also lobbying. Where do we put our foots towards, as far as tribal councils go, or tribal governments go, start making that leverage push. So I would encourage anyone who's, at a tribe interested in doing something like this, get a hold of folks like Chris and say, this is where we're looking to go. Let's start talking with one another. There's folks that I talk with over in Minnesota and South Dakota, other tribes that are making a lot of different moves out there, and we're all operating in little islands. We don't really know, what everyone else is doing. So having these types of conversations is really good, because we're all parts of the same solution. And we'll make it happen. I was just thinking of, we're not democratizing power, we're indigenizing power.
Nice. Cool. And then there's just one last audience question, which is a really great way to wrap it up. Lauren wants to know if there's any social media feeds they can follow regarding the project. So if you just go to onpetuwe.com and you scroll to the bottom, there's little social icons. And if it's easier, it's just Sage SRST on Twitter and Instagram, and Sage Development Authority on Facebook. So you can follow all those pages for updates.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you so much to Chris and Joseph for explaining this project and sharing all your insight to everybody today. And thank you so much to everyone in the audience for tuning in.
Thank you very much.
Thank you
Appreciate
all.
your time, everybody. Thank you, Chris.
Have a good
Thank
day,
you.
everyone.
All right. Have a good one. Thanks.
Back to the busy day.